Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, celebrity interviews, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. But for our radio audience here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM and WYADonline.com, we're glad that you all could be with us. Also, joining us are our friends at iHeartRadio and Amazon Music Podcast. We're glad you all could be with us as well. We're excited to welcome author Jen Ferguson to our program today. Jen's celebrating the new book, The Summer of Bitter and Sweet. We're going to talk to her not only about the writing of the book, but also what it's been like for her to share these characters with the world. And, of course, we'll let you guys know how to stay connected with her as well. Jen, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, Jen, The Summer of Bitter and Sweet is a beautiful book, both in the cover but also in the story. So I want to ask you, what has it been like for you to see the early response from readers?
It's been incredible. I'm going to go with the word incredible. This is exactly what an author dreams of, right? To have their book out in the world and to have people responding to it.
Yeah. And this is a path that it's very obvious. I mean, I don't think anyone would believe if you were to say, that this is, the first book for me, right? I mean, I don't think anyone after reading this book would think that. But did this feel like a culmination of a dream come true for you?
Oh, it is 100%. I've been writing novels since I was a teenager in high school. You will never find the 3 novels I completed in high school. I've totally deleted them. But I've been doing this for a really, really long time.
And there's so many different layers of this story. Of course, we get to meet Lou, and I love the fact how you kind of take us into, not only the experiences, but also, I think, the sights and sounds. Did you know going into this book, Jen, that the surroundings and the culture is going to be as much of a character as Lou was?
For sure. So I spent 2 very formative years in Lloydminster, Alberta, Saskatchewan, which is in the Canadian prairies, rather north. And that town imprinted itself on my mind. So when I knew I was going to set a book there, I knew that the town and the land and the surroundings and the culture of the Canadian prairies would be as important to the story as Lou or any of her friends.
Well, I think another important aspect of the book, and you make it very clear from the very beginning, Jen, is ice cream. So I want to talk about that because when we hear the title, The Summer of Bitter and Sweet, talk to us about ice cream and how it kind of plays a role in this as well.
Certainly. So Lou works for her family's organic dairy and ice cream business. They serve up ice cream flavors that are perhaps unexpected. They do not use chocolate in their ice cream. They use the native edible plants on the land around them. So some of the ice creams, they're not all sweet. Some of them are also bitter. There's a test batch of mustard ice cream that gets talked about, and that probably isn't the sweetest flavor.
Well, and what I love, too, is the idea of sweetness and the way you play with that, right? I mean, you talk about, I had made a note in chapter 16 of the book as we're kind of going throughout it, Jen. Lou talks about the sweet messages and talks about, her mother's sweetness. Talk to us about that and how you were able to play with that idea of sweetness throughout the book.
For sure. So this book is a heavy book. It deals with a lot of traumas that Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit peoples face. But life is not only the bitter. You can't have the bitter without the sweet. So there are a lot of really lovely, sweet moments in this book because in our lives there are a lot of lovely, sweet moments, even when we're going through something difficult.
Exactly. Such a great thing. So I want to talk about this side of it. You've written this book. You've lived with these characters. What was letting them go like? Because now you've kind of let them out in the world like they're going off to school or something. What has that been like for you to be able to kind of set yourself free of them for a while?
So I think that I perhaps am unusual. A lot of my author friends will imagine what happens after the end of the story, and they'll write epilogues, and they'll think about their characters at university, and they'll think if their characters stay together later in the future. And I'm really very much at the last word. I have left Lou and her friends in the story, and now it's up for the reader to do that imaginary work of what happens to them afterwards.
Oh, okay. I love that. I love that. So, does that mean then your mind is kind of already switched to what you want to share next, Jen? Is that kind of why you think it's easier for you to let go?
Maybe. So the way publishing works is by the time a book comes out, you're already working on revisions for your next book. So part of the business is about moving on to the next project, even if the book just came out yesterday.
Yeah. And that at least will let people know there is more to come. I want to talk about another thing about Lou's journey in the book, The Summer Bitter and Sweet, because I think a lot of this book, too, for me and as a reader, Jen, was about being able to shift, being able to know that when the winds change, that things aren't always going to stay the same, right? There's a great way that you're able to kind of share it through Lou's voice of kind of how life can kind of wreak havoc and almost like a storm, and kind of holding on to what's important. What was that like for you to kind of think about life when it comes to being able to let go and knowing how, no matter how difficult things might be, being able to still pick up the pieces and move forward?
Yeah, I think that is something that we have to learn in order to exist in this world and in the society that we live in. But I also think that it's equally important to remember the things that stay constant. Yeah. And that's things like kinship and community. Those are the things that are still there for you when the storm comes through.
Right, such a great thing, and I think I love the fact that you're able to play with this in this book. Did you have any doubt that you were, because the book, and again, as people are reading it, I referenced chapter 16 earlier, the great thing about the book is this book is pretty, quote unquote, timely in that, I mean, the time, the way the time passes, we're kind of able to keep up, really with it as it's going through. What was that like for you to kind of decide how all these events happen in a relatively short period of time?
Yeah, so one of the things about writing is that you have to figure out what your scope is. How long are you going to stay in the world? And someone who maybe writes fantasy wants to stay in that world for a really long period of time. And I'm writing about an 18-year-old who's just graduated high school, and I'm writing a young adult book. So there are some young adult books that take place in university, but most of them sort of end when high school ends. Mm-hmm. So that summer between ending high school and starting university felt like a really significant time frame and also a very limited one.
Gotcha. Well, it definitely is one of those stories that people will enjoy. It's entertaining, but I think also Lou's journey is one that is inspiring, too, and I think that's going to make it a fun read for people. Again, everyone, Jen Ferguson is our guest today. We're discussing her literary journey that's led her now to this novel, The Summer of Bitter and Sweet. You can get it through our friends at Amazon.com or through your favorite local bookstore. And, Jen, how can our audience stay connected with you?
They can visit me online at jenfergusonwrite.com, or they can find a bunch of new debut authors, including myself, at 22debuts.com.
All right. Well, Jen, congratulations to you again. Excited for you in the new book and looking forward to our next conversation together.
Thank you very much.
More than welcome. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. So let's go make today amazing. Take care.